Hi, everybody. My name is Joe. I'm a compulsive overeater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet. I write them down. I share with my sponsor. I don't eat in between meals, no matter what. And I am a grateful abstinent member of GreySheeters Anonymous. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be with my Monday night meeting. I've been working kind of crazy shifts, and it's really messing with me. And it's not what I prefer, but it's not forever. It is what it is. Got to pay the bills, and and like my other programs, I'm trying to find balance, and continue to do some meetings and to work a program that keeps me out of the food and keeps me abstinent and keeps me emotionally sober. And that's where my struggle has been during this process. But I'm good. I'm here. I'm eating my 3 weight measured meals, no matter what, and I'm grateful to be here. As a kid, food was my first addiction. Of course, I didn't know it, and food was also, the only love I think that my mother. I was from a single parent. The only way my mother really showed love was by feeding us, and we didn't have a lot of money, and feeding us was an issue. There were 6 of us, and it was always a focus for her, and it was always something she worked really hard at and did really well at, considering the circumstances. But probably my overwhelming memory from that period of time is that when there were leftovers, her saying things such as, "Don't worry, Joey will finish it." And then she'd scoop them all out and put them on my plate. And she used to refer to me as the family swill bucket. And, and that was a little hurtful, but I didn't care. I wanted the food, to be honest. And I gained weight, and I remember being called a baby blimp in the 5th and 6th grade. And I was only baby blimp because there was a kid heavier than me, and he was blimp. And, again, hurtful. But where I grew up, you weren't really, you didn't show any of those feelings. You only showed anger. And I got into a number of altercations, so to speak, over similar things. And then there was, there were other times when I just handled them with sarcasm or, shots, return shots. But it was, it was a hard time. I was always active. I was always athletic. I was always doing something, but I was always eating. I used to drive my friends crazy because we lived in this housing project, and we would be playing the sport of the season out in the backyard. And I specifically remember baseball. I'd be up at bat, and my mother would call. It was me and my older brother would always be playing with everybody else. And my mother would be like, "Hey, Joe, John, come on in. It's time for supper." And I'd just drop the bat. I could be, in the middle of the at-bat. I'd drop the bat, run in the house, and eat my dinner. And my friends are all like, "What are you doing?" Yeah. And, they still talk about that. When we started swapping stories, they still bring that up. And it's, 50 years later, But, that's it. Food was my priority. Food was my comfort, and, it really didn't get any better than that. Got to high school, and in high school I did a growth spurt for me. I'm only 5'6.5", or was 5'6.5". My girls tell me I'm shrinking. I went from 5'1" to 5'6" going into my sophomore year, and I thinned out, but I didn't know it, and I really didn't know it. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't know it. I still thought I was fat. And I really didn't figure it out until I was home from college. I was done with college, graduated from college, and I ran into this girl who I dated for a little bit in high school. And she said, "Oh, I have a cup of tea. Let's catch up." So I'm having a cup of tea with her, and she says, "I want to show you something." And she goes in the room, and she comes out, and she's got a picture, and she's got her finger or her thumb over the face of the person in the picture, and she says, "Who's that?" I'm looking, I don't know. And it's this really buffed guy, 6-pack, the whole deal, really buffed. And I'm looking at it completely confused. I'm like, I don't know color. Who is it? I don't have any idea. Then she takes her finger off the picture, and it was me. and I'm sure my jaw dropped to the floor, like, because I had no idea. I really was stunned that I ever looked like that. And that's one of the ways I know I belong here. We have that fancy word for it. I think it's dysmorphia, but I don't even know if I'm saying that right. But I can't trust my own head when it comes to this stuff. I still, I don't really look in the mirror. I don't. We've got mirrors all over the place. I really don't. I walk by them 100 times a day. I don't look. I don't, and I know I have no real good sense of what I look like. I'm in a thin body now, but I still feel fat, and and I know that's my disease. I know that's my head working on me. I picked up other addictions along the way. Drugs and alcohol became a thing for me in my teens. I had a lot of signposts related to that. Of course, at the time they were happening, they were just war stories, but they were there and they kept happening. And ultimately, I went off to college, and I had these goals in mind that I thought would make my life better, would make me happy, would get me out of the housing project, would keep me from continuing to be poor. And I started to obtain, to work towards some of these things. One was going to college. And I knew for me, if I didn't get out of where I lived, if I didn't go away to college, I was sure I would never graduate. I was sure I wouldn't focus. I wouldn't get it done. So I was one of only 2 people from my senior class that went away to college. Kids we didn't do it. And I went away to college, and I had ideas in my head about, what was important to me. One was I wanted my own refrigerator where I could put my own beverages, to a lesser extent my own food, but my own beverages, and be able to have those whenever I chose. And the other wonderful thing I discovered was the meal ticket. It was a card then, it was a ticket. And we had this cafeteria with all kinds of foods in it that I had never even come across. I didn't even know what yogurt was. I'm like, I didn't know what any of this stuff was. And you could sit in this cafeteria for I don't know, it was open for like 2 or 3 hours at each meal time. And you could just stay in there the whole time, and eat as much as you wanted. And I took advantage of that, and to put on a significant amount of weight in college. Thus the reason why the young lady was showing me the picture of me when I was thinner, because I was, probably around 225 then, somewhere in that area. I got a DUI in my senior year in college. Long story short, ultimately that ended up in me having to go to a program. And in that program, I developed an interest in addictions counseling. I wasn't convinced I had a problem yet, but I was convinced that I wanted to work doing alcoholism treatment specifically. So I came home from college. I got a job as an alcoholism counselor. I learned all about what ultimately was my disease, but I worked with street alcoholics, sending people to detoxes and halfway houses and AA, and attending some AA myself, some Al-Anon, learning all about this disease and developed really good knowledge of this disease. I married a girl from my hometown because, that was my mentality. I grew up in this really tight-knit Irish neighborhood of Boston, and it was basically us against the world. Everybody else was the enemy. If you weren't a townie, you were the enemy. So I had a really closed mind, but so I wanted to marry a girl from Charlestown. I wanted to work in Charlestown. I wanted to live in Charlestown forever. I didn't want to cross the bridges. I didn't want to deal with anybody else, and I just wanted to be in my own little cocoon. And I had a very closed way of seeing things and of being, a closed-minded way of being. But I started on this path of doing addictions counseling. I got my college degree. I married the girl from Charlestown. She was a longtime friend, and we saw each other for a long time before we got married. And I was thinking all these things were going to make me happy, and they weren't. I was becoming more and more miserable. I was putting on more weight. I was using substances more. I had a lot of anger. My feelings have always come out in anger. Ultimately, that's where I end up. And I know now that there's a lot of underlying fear there. There's a lot of other feelings that come out in anger, but, ultimately, that's the one that shows, and that's still a thing that happens. Matter of fact, it happened today. And, and it doesn't feel good when I get there. I don't like when I get like that. And that happens when I'm not doing the things I need to be in good spiritual condition, doing readings, doing, phone calls, doing meetings more regularly, and, doing those things that we do around here to stay on the beam. So I'm doing addictions counseling. I'm active in all my addictions. I'm getting more and more miserable. At 35 years old, everything crashed. My wife left. She took my sons. I lost my job. Blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I ended up, after a year and a half of diving deeper into my disease. The food was always there, but the drugs and alcohol were more at the forefront at that point in time. Ultimately, I got sober at 35. I went into AA, started working a program of AA. I was exposed to GreySheet in my first year of sobriety by Susie Gage, who some of you know. And I started doing the GreySheet. And I did it for like 4 or 5 days. And I worked in the prison at the time. And I was walking across the yard. And I almost fainted. I actually fell up against the wall. I would have fainted if the wall wasn't there. And I got scared. And I just hung on to that for the next, 27 years, a long time, where, I just thought, that's too much for me. My body won't handle that. I can't do that. That's not going to happen, So I actually followed Tara into OA. I definitely was the follower when I came to the food stuff. We were both sober when we first met, but she started addressing her food addiction in OA, and I eventually followed her in. For a little while, I was convinced I was big boned and I didn't need to go there. But eventually, I kind of figured it out and went and got some abstinence and lost the weight and picked up and put the weight back on. I went back and forth and yo-yoed and resisted GreySheet for years and years and years. Had a period where I was all scheduled to get bariatric surgery. I only had to give them I think another $250, and we were going to schedule the surgery. But I knew in my heart of hearts that I was an addict, and that wouldn't work for me. Ultimately, I got abstinent again in OA, lost the weight again, lost all of that. I guess it's now about 2.5 years ago, I started praying on a daily basis to my higher power to give me the willingness to be willing to do GreySheet. I'd finally come to understand, at least intellectually, that I could not do this any other way. I couldn't continue to have grains in my food plan. I couldn't continue to have meals that I didn't weigh and measure. It hadn't worked. I've been trying it. I tried it and tried it and tried it. I couldn't sustain it. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And one morning on August 7th, 2019, I woke up and I looked at Tara and I said, I think I'll have an abstinent breakfast today. And you've all heard me say it, or most of you heard me say it before. Within 10 seconds, I had an abstinent breakfast in my hands. It was right there. And with instructions, here's your abstinent breakfast. You need to get a sponsor. You need to do, you need to do this. You need to get a GreySheet from somebody. You need to do this. I can't do it for you. I can't be your sponsor. You're on your own. So, that's where it all began. And I've been coming to this meeting since the very beginning. This is my home group. I love all you guys. I love being abstinent. I am so grateful, and I know I'm absolutely here through the grace of my higher power, because left to my own devices, I would not be doing this. This turned out to be nothing like I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be so restrictive and so difficult and so horrible, and what am I going to do? And it's the opposite. It's just like, the foods are great. That's what they are. This is what I get to choose from. I get to have lovely meals. I get to have 3 of them a day, and that's all I need. That's all I want. And I'm good. My sponsor tells me I can't do something. It's like, okay, move on. What can I do? And I do it. And I can only attribute that to my higher power. Left to my own devices, the most normal thing in the world for me to do is to eat those things that are the worst for me. And because of this program, because of the GreySheet, because of what you folks do and being here with you and doing this with you, I don't eat no matter what. And I'm abstinent and grateful because of that. Thank you so much. I love you guys. It's awesome to see you.